Hey, everybody, it's Tim Gillette back here with another Tim Gillette show. And, this good friend of mine, Jesse Mogle, and I know Jesse, you know what I mean, through connections I have around the country. And, he agreed to be on the show and said, "Hey, Tim, I will be glad to let you dissect my life and business and tell all your audience about me." I think he's a really cool dude. So, we've never had really a one-on-one chat where we actually got to talk about in depth what we do. And I thought, what better way to do it than put us on air and do it? So let me bring him up here. And Jesse, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you?
I'm on 71. So I'm getting through.
That is amazing that you are doing 100 of these in 30 days. I give you, that's props, brother. That's amazing.
It's what I'm learning. I'm learning what not to do again. Anyway, man, so what are you up to, man? What are you doing during this whole thing, being stuck at home?
Oh, man, I've honestly found the quarantine to be very uplifting to my amount of time I've had to put towards the business. Mm-hmm. So everything I've been wanting to prioritize that I thought was going to take 3 or 6 months, I've been able to condense in just the last 6 weeks that I've been released from my primary source of income, my first job. And I had a huge to-do list. I wish it was near me. I'd show you. It covers this whole piece of paper. And I've checked everything off of that. So now with May 1st rolling in, I'm getting ready to create a whole new one. And we'll see how long I'm still stuck at home. I live in Los Angeles. We've got a pretty tight quarantine going. So it'll be interesting to see when they start to release us back out into the wild.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, it's funny. You never thought you'd live in that big of a city and be confined to such a small space.
I don't think I ever fully took advantage of this city whenever it was completely open, mm-hmm. to the wild. And as soon as they start to release us back out, whether it's going to the beach or the hiking trails or the zoo or, just going to a concert that is down the street, there's going to be a new appreciation for all of these things that I'd begun to take for granted. And I'd be very interested in knowing if the rest of the country feels the same way, that, perhaps awesome stuff that was in their backyard that they just ignored because it was always available will be places that they really look forward to going to once the quarantine's been lifted and we're ready to get back out there and be social.
Yeah. I think my wife and I are already thinking how many more times we're going to go to Napa every year for tasting wine, because it's we never knew we didn't want it bad enough until we couldn't go. Yeah.
That's pretty much where I feel like most people are, is that, well, I think a majority of people love it to come home from work, come home from whatever they're doing, sit down at home, Netflix and chill, eat out whenever intermittently. And, everybody loves being home until you're told to be home. Then that little 9-year-old's like, I can't go to the beach anymore. Oh, okay. Well, now I want to go every day.
Yeah. Or last Friday, we actually got to-go orders and and sat on the couch. Originally, we were going to attempt to go out and pick them up. And then finally we were like, nah, let's just order with DoorDash and have them delivered. But because we've been cooking inside. My wife's a really good cook, and she loves to experiment in the kitchen. So we get some interesting stuff, but every now and then she's like, I just don't want to. And having to cook so many, she's like, let's have a day where we order out. And our order out bill was just outrageously in price, because we're like, well, oh yeah, they have that in the menu. Oh, they have that. Oh, they have that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely, I've always tended on the frugal side with food. So I tend to just cook all my meals at home, because in Los Angeles, the moment you walk out your door to go out to eat, it's $50. I don't care what it's gas, valet. I don't drink anymore, but back when I did, then it was $100 bill. So it's like $50 to go to a restaurant and, have their version of a steak, or, make mine at home and have all my own fixings and be able to do it for $15. So yeah, I'm going to choose that. Yeah. But again, now that I'm told that I can't go and sit at a restaurant, I've got this list 10 long of places that as soon as they say we can go sit down at restaurants, I am in.
Yeah. So, you're stuck inside. Now you've got the list. All right. But let's talk a little bit more about what you do. All right. Because I want my listeners to find out about you and go investigate you and stuff. What is it that you do as your primary business? And you said you had a secondary business you're working on. So let's talk about both.
Primarily, I run two different podcasts. One's called From Sobriety to Recovery. Another one's called College Success Habits. I started both of those to speak. One speaks to current people in addiction recovery and helps them with their growth mindset strategies, overcoming limiting beliefs, emotional maturity, things of that nature. So I'm helping current addicts. I started College Success Habits to specifically help, if not get in the way of the progress a lot of college students are making towards addiction, right? So one helps current addicts, one is for future addicts, and in hopes that there are no future addicts. So while the shows are titled differently in the way that I talk to the listeners is very differently, because some are already in addiction and some of them are just now discovering alcohol, the things that I talk about are, you could literally just change a couple words in each episode and it would go right to the other ones. So when I got sober a little over 3 years ago, I like to wear my pendants around my neck. I started getting into life coaching. I started looking into neuro-linguistic programming to overcome the limiting beliefs in my own head. And through that, I became a life coach. And I've got a book coming out called College Success Habits in about 2 weeks. And so becoming a podcaster, since I went to school for journalism, just became sort of the easiest route to get to people to begin to help. And I spend an inordinate amount of time working on both of those shows, and then all the little projects that come from each show, life coaching programs for the addicts, a new book for the people going to college on how they can use my 7 principles to overcome their limiting beliefs. All of it ties in, it all starts at service to the community, and it funnels down to just helping people become the best version of themselves that they know is inside of them, but perhaps they've forgotten because limiting beliefs based on society, parents, things like that.
So, I didn't know you were coming out with a book, but that'll be a whole nother podcast. We're gonna have you on again because that. But that's one of the things we do is interview authors. But on this one here, all right. See, the podcast, is that in the coaching? Is that your main line of business, or you working another job right now to support it? Or have you completely into a business plan?
The job that I work to support it is a hotel here in Hollywood, California. And of course, because of the quarantine, that got shut down. I've worked there. Goodness, I think I just passed my 7-year anniversary. So I got hired there back in 2012. I took the summer and traveled around the country on a motorcycle, spreading my mom's ashes across 29 states, 12,000 miles all around the country in honor of her. At the time, it was the 5-year anniversary of her passing. And when I came back from that entire journey, I had this huge idea to get out there and help other people overcome grief that they've experienced through the loss of their loved ones. And I needed a job that would help pay the bills while I explored that route as an actual career. And that's where being a waiter and a bartender at the hotel came into play. And 7 years later, I'm still there. It's an amazing job. They're very amicable about my schedule restraints. You see me at all the events we're supposed to be at. I take a tremendous amount of time off. I go and speak from stages at businesses, colleges, universities, addiction centers, in any place where they're looking for growth mindset strategies and a new way of thinking, I'm the guy they come to. And so being able to have the stability of that job, and in Los Angeles, if you don't have a stable income, you'll get washed right out. You'll end up back in whatever hometown sent you here. And I cannot begin to say enough blessings about that hotel. That being said, I have certainly begun to make my exit strategy known, most importantly to myself. By seeing a way out and creating these new income streams. And, just when you go out there and you share your message, Tim, you speak, you do this show, you have an amazing YouTube following, and you help people get their messages out through that. When you get out there and you start following your true spark, that thing that drives your passion, I've gotten off stage before and I thought I could plow through a wall like a bull right now. And it's overwhelming, the emotions I get when I get out there and I impact people's lives, and by what I say resonating with them. I could have kept going, but I started. I can be very wordy.
Yeah, you mentioned the hotel industry, and I don't know, Larry Broughton through our connections, Craig, right? Yeah. I had Larry Broughton on, and he's talking about him in the hotel industry, and just, what an industry how it's hurting him right now. But man, but at least you had other stuff going on, which is a cool thing. But you said something in there that made me go back to, I want to question you on, and that is, you know what I mean? I know you're helping people with sobriety and stuff, but you said you're a bartender, so you
Yes.
can be around it, but but it's not addictive to you anymore.
Yeah, it's when I knew sobriety was coming and I started to map out my strategies for how I was going to make that happen, I had to seriously question my source of income and whether I was going to be able to keep in that industry and be active in my sobriety and my addiction recovery. And because of my fandom of this show called Cheers back from the 80s, if you remember Cheers, and this it might sound odd to your listeners, but let's open our minds to the idea that when you get something in your head and you see it as a possibility, regardless of where the information came from, your mind can literally just flip a switch and say, oh, okay, well, that person did it, or I saw it be done by them, or I saw it accomplished by that, so clearly I can do it. For whatever odd reason it would be, the moment I thought, well, can I still be a bartender and be in addiction recovery? I thought, well, Sam Malone did it and he seemed like he was perfectly fine. So why couldn't I do it? Now, that's a Hollywood character that a bunch of people in a room wrote up. Is that necessarily the best foundation to use for my rationale to stay? I would not be the only one in my industry who has quit drinking and using drugs and still stayed in that industry. It's actually very empowering, Tim, because you get to see it from a whole new perspective. That now when that person comes in at 6 a.m. and they're dying for a drink, I know exactly what they had been doing all night that led them in front of me. And while they're not looking for me to give them any kind of sobriety coaching by any means, I can start a conversation with them and perhaps just add a little positivity that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So it's actually very empowering to be able to go in and do that job. And I've always been a fervent believer that you do not drink on the job. So working at a place that has tons of alcohol around me doesn't really affect my desire to drink because I never let myself drink at the job anyways.
Yeah. And it's funny you brought up Cheers. We were just talking about, shows that we missed the other day. It was like Cheers. And we started to look it up. We were going to try to buy the episodes to watch them. I'm like, it's weird. But yeah, I watched Cheers. I was living in the New England area at the time when Cheers was on. So,
then you had that was Boston all the way.
Yeah,
so
it was.
You had a deep love of that show.
Yep. So it's interesting, but you used a TV show as a mindset to help you go, okay, well, if they did it, I can do it. And it was a movie. It's like, I used to get lessons from movies. Like, and I tell people all the time, I love Joe Dirt. And everybody's like, Joe Dirt? And I'm like, yeah, this guy was like, had no luck whatsoever, but he was positive everywhere he went. No matter what life threw him, he was like, life's a garden, dig it, That I thought was inspiring. And everybody's like, well, it's just a character. So what? If it's a character who inspires you, I play characters in a way on a podcast and it inspires people. What's the difference? Yeah.
Yes. Because we both go out there, we uplift people, we get them to see a possibility within themselves that they just need a little nudging toward, but they know it's in them or they wouldn't be in front of us. And any kind of nudging that goes in the right direction. That was a character drawn up. I love Joe Dirt. I laugh at that movie all the time, but people in a room came up with that person and they started drawing from their own life experiences in order to come up with that person. Yeah. So in a way, we're really basing it off of like this sort of an amalgamation of all these caricatures that they just shoved into Joe Dirt that ultimately, I'll hear him say some stuff. It just came on YouTube TV the other day, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, what a great quote!" I wrote it down, and then I came up with a whole podcast around just his idea of no matter how bad things get, I can always just make them better if I try harder. That was the whole philosophy. So I think you can find inspiration anywhere you desire to look for it if you just are open to the opportunity that it is going to be there.
I can go back through the movies over the years that I like, most people are like, why on earth did you go see that movie? And I'm like, yeah, but here's what inspired me out of that movie. But that's it. You found inspiration from where you needed it to get you through. And like now you're creating this podcast. I'm trying to create a podcast called Bartender Life Coach. So it's just like...
Well, honestly, and I mean, and again, crazy as it sounds,
Yeah.
one of the reasons I first got into life coaching is, I mean, you spend 20 years behind a bar like I have. At the time, it was 17, and you become this pseudo life coach. People sit in front of you, they order drink after drink, they tell you about their wife, their kids, their job, they spill their hearts out at you, and then they're basically looking at you to give them advice because you're the person who is the conduit for their drinking. So clearly, you're in a power position because you're behind the bar. Then people will sit there and ask you for tips and suggestions and basically coaching. So when I got into what I was going to do after I left addiction, I was like, well, I mean, I've always been a little bit of a life coach. Maybe I should take some classes. Maybe I should read some books on it. See if that's something that I could actually be good at, because it always made me feel really good when people asked me my opinion and then I gave it to them. And then they come back a week later and say, oh, wow, that totally worked. Or, okay, well, it could have worked better. And then we would just come up with a new strategy. So I absolutely believe in, just that power of seeing things in a different light. And I think you'd be very successful with that podcast.
Yeah, well, I've been chewing on the idea for 3.5 years. So one of these days, I mean, I have the domains, I have everything to go with it. I just haven't put it. I don't know what I think I want to make it into like a drama series or comedy series, not just an interview series. So that's the hard thing. I'm trying to figure out what I really want to do with it. So, but so you're doing 2 podcasts then on the side, and you're doing coaching and mentoring. Going into that, all right, do you find, like at the hotel, do you find people who basically, pull clients from there, or where do you pull your clients from to help?
Great question, because I remember we were in a group together way back, and one of the questions was proposed, how do we meet people who will resonate with us and become our clients and whatnot? And within that conversation, it was like, do you go out and seek individuals, or do you go speak at events? And from there, people who resonate with your message will come and talk to you. They'll get on your email list. They will do whatever they can to find out more. And so between the podcast, which I've had remarkable success with, especially in the addiction recovery world, they are very willing to hit me up on the back end and ask me questions and bring me on as their coach. And then go speaking at universities, go and speaking at real estate businesses, small businesses, talking to them about growth mindset strategies. Inevitably, their manager comes up and wants to do something with the entire group. And then boom, now you're running a mastermind for 8 of the managers, and you meet once a week. And so the speaking, by hands down, has been my best way of what do they call that? Client acquisition, I suppose, if you're going to use the technical term. But in order to resonate with as many people as quickly as possible, the podcast and the speaking, hands down, if anybody is looking for a way to get that message out and find a following as quickly as possible, those 2 methods will bring rewards to the effort.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I kind of love them too. That's why I'm a content creator, and that's content creation to build my business. I love it. I've always loved it. But let me ask you this: out of the clients you're getting, are you getting more college age students, or are you getting more business type students?
When it comes to the student aspects of it, what it's leaning towards now are people who are within their first or second year. And generally they hear the show, perhaps their parents brought it to them. They'll DM me through Instagram, asking me some questions, and then they'll bring me on. Right now, almost solely, it has been the transition from high school to college, because there's so much that goes into that. When I wrote the book, College Success Habits, the 7 Powerful Principles to Excel in College and Beyond, I've got the little picture of the cover here. I wanted a big version of it like this thing above me, but apparently copy shops are not considered essential, so they're not open right now. But more importantly, if you go to a Barnes & Noble, there are literally 10 shelves of books on ACT, SATs, all these ways to get into college. And then the amount of books that talk about what you should be doing and how to handle your emotions and your physical development and your mental acuity while you're there. It's literally, if you took all the books and put them all in one row, they would be that big. Whereas you're looking at how to get into college is that big. So much will get you there, and then so little is left as a resource to help you while you're there. And so what I'm finding is that the students who are specifically looking out for me, or their parents, are the ones who are looking to make that transition smooth, because all of a sudden there's no parental supervision. Alcohol and drugs are ready. We are an emotional immature society. So most kids are going into college with a low level of emotional maturity, and they're being left to their own devices, which often leads to vices. And it's not a pretty predicament to find yourself in if you have no self-control and you're left to your own ways and means.
So yeah, I mean, the key there being the self-control. And how many people do you find that are addicts that it was a self-control problem? It really wasn't like the beer or the wine or the bourbon that was the problem. It was a self-control problem that bourbon or beer or drugs just covered it up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for one thing, all humans, but especially people in addiction, have in common is suffering. We all have some sort of traumatic, I call them traumatic time capsules that become trauma time bombs. And so you have these time capsules of these little things that happened at 4, 8, 12, whatever they were, and they create these trauma bubbles. And now they become this time capsule that's just waiting to blow up one day. And you get yourself into a situation where it's readily available. No one's really paying attention to what you're doing, and you can get away with it with relatively zero consequences. And now you couple that with emotional immaturity and a lack of self-control, and now it's just the moment it gets in front of you, it's just like, yeah, more, when you're really trying to mask all this pain and suffering from the past. And then this, alcohol, that's good, that numbs the pain, and then that medicine eventually becomes the poison, and then that poison almost kills you. So it's like I said, the college show and the addiction show, they have so many things in common, but I just don't know if the college kids are ready to hear that they could one day become the addiction folks.
And how, I forget if you mentioned, how many years have you been doing those podcasts?
The addiction one started on my second soberversary, so that I've been doing that for about 1.5 years now. Okay. I'm coming up on 1 year for the College Success Habits podcast, and and already very good followings for both, with very minimal social media output. I've just really easily my search engine optimization is on point there. So most people just find me by going in and, typing in sobriety. I must get, thousands of listens a week to my sobriety show just because of Spotify, which I did not see as being a portal that would help me, but it has become my biggest avenue for reaching out to addicts.
And I would think, I would think sobriety would be a tough keyword, but I guess, I guess you've cracked the code on that keyword if you're getting a lot out of it.
Yeah, I think what ends up happening is that there are a lot of people who start a sobriety show. And then when I've gone back and looked at my competition, when I've gone back and look at, I don't really consider them competition. We all have an amazing story to tell, and we just do it in different ways. A lot of them don't continue with it long term. I see a lot of them show up for 3-6 months. Here it's once a week. All of a sudden now it's once every 3 weeks. And before you know it, it's once every 2 months, and it just goes away. And Spotify puts you higher up in the rankings the more frequently your show comes out and the more consistently you are with it. So it's only once a week, although last week was a 3-part journey I took people on, but because it comes out every single day at the same time, every Tuesday at 8 a.m., all of a sudden, boom, there I am.
So, are yours done interview style, or are yours a combination of learning and interviews?
Learning and interviews. I started off the first year straight up learning, as I began to seek out the right kinds of people to come on the show, much in the same way that you've done, where you're looking for people who have a really interesting story to tell and are achieving great things in their lives. Instagram has been my best way to find other people running podcasts. So I go and I get on theirs, they get on mine. We share our stories with each other's listeners. If somebody started a company around addiction and addiction recovery and sobriety, I'm definitely going to have that person on. I had somebody the other day that started doing triathlons when they got sober as a way to show them that they could battle through anything, no matter how difficult and no matter how much pain it brought them. So I'm always looking for that uplifting story where, somebody has, a story they really want to tell, and finding the right person, as you've probably discovered, Tim, can be difficult because some people want to share their story, but they don't necessarily know how to do it in interview format.
Well, good point. They don't know how to do it in interview format. And have you had some emotional stories on there? So in other words, you bring them to tears, trying to talk to them and interview them.
Not yet. I was trying to think. I've had a couple. You can tell they get a little verklempt. They get a little in their throat. For the most part, people come on and they're so excited about what they're going to tell that even when that emotion starts to dip in, and again, people in addiction recovery can often have some stigmas and some issues with diving in too emotionally to themselves just because of all that trauma that stems in there. So I've yet to have somebody get super, super emotional. What's funny, as soon as the microphone goes off, I've gotten that. But it's like when the microphone's on, they're trying to put their best foot forward and their best face or whatever. And so it's been an interesting journey to see how that's been different each time I interview someone.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So and that was my next question to be, does your interviewing change as you go through it? So it's like, my show, if you'd watched 2 years ago, my interviews are totally different. Is yours same way? They progress and they don't stay the same?
Absolutely. I go in and I'll ask the person, like, what are your 3 keys to your sobriety and recovery? What are the 3 things you've latched onto? So I go in with a general framework, like, okay, if the conversation starts to dissolve into just randomness, at least I can pull it back and go back to these 3 points. Generally, once we get into the first one, they start saying some really cool stuff. They bring a story in. Now I'm interjecting with my story. We're going off on that. And generally we hit all 3 of the topics, but it's more like this is very conversational where I don't pre-plan any kind of questions, because then what ends up happening is I end up wanting to follow that format so badly that I might overlook something super cool that I hear.
Yeah. Mine, if you can't tell me, my format is I'm going off of everything you say to create the next question.
And that's the best way. And I think, because that's how, if you and I were standing at one of our events that we attend frequently, like, we're not going to go up and be like, okay, these are the 3 things I'm going to ask Tim right now. I better make sure I cover all 3 of these or the conversation's going to suck. We just walk up and say, hey, Tim, Jess, what's going on? Yeah. And before you know it, 20 minutes has passed. So it's conversational like that. I mean, we're not Barbara Walters. I'm not sitting here trying to make somebody cry, but by all means, if they want to dive deep and express something that's very painful to them that they've overcome, I do provide that space for them to feel vulnerability is an option, and it will be welcomed and received in accordance.
Yeah. I've never gotten anybody to cry in my show yet. I've gotten a lot of laughs, but not anybody cry. But one of the things I think about, because of the fact of, creating content, because it's what I do, is I help people create content. Right. Is, are you building a rather large community with this? Like, you got a Facebook group, a mastermind group. Are you trying to do that with it, or what?
Yes. What's been really fun to dive into throughout this entire process is how to turn this into more of a mastermind, a masterclass series. And I'm actually currently in the depths of that. If you've done marketing research before, so you know what it means to come up with an avatar. And so I've spent the last few days figuring that out, and who would be the most, wanting of basically everybody who goes to addiction recovery meetings is somebody who's already willing to get into a group format and talk about what's going on. Now, are they ready to sit in front of me while I teach them a topic for 20 minutes and then dive specifically into that? And so it's been really interesting figuring out that entire system and what that's going to look like down the road. And I have no doubt there's going to be a lot of A/B testing, and there's going to be a substantial amount of feedback opportunities that others might call failures. And within that scope of learning, I'll be able to really harness the real power that comes from groupthink strategies.
Cool. Because my whole thing is community and then monetize. So do you have a monetization strategy behind your podcast right now, or
no,
is it just community?
No, and that's a good question, because when I first started, it was like straight up community. Because I went with the Field of Dreams methodology. If I build it, they will come. And what I'm already noticing, on Instagram, 8,500 followers there, thousands of downloads per episode. And so what I'm noticing now is that the ones who are really into what I'm saying, the ones who resonate like right off the bat, they're going to be the ones who hit me up on the back end through the DMs and the messenger. And those are the ones that are asking, well, how can I become more involved? How can I get more of you, whether that's one-on-one or in a group type setting? And I always knew that would be the monetization strategy. you know, looking at it as a business and not just as a hobby. I knew one day if I was going to be able to leave the restaurant and be able to travel the country and go to all these addiction centers and change lives and go to colleges and uplift the youth and get them on the right path towards success in life, that I was going to have to be able to monetize it. I was going to have to be able to pay my bills with it. And speaking on stage for the college show and building masterminds and master classes for the addiction recovery sector of this entire thing, that was absolutely on the drawing board. And now here we are about 1.5 years into the sobriety show, and now that's starting to take root, and it's been exciting to see where it's going to go. I have a lot of questions and very few answers so far.
Many of us still have a lot of questions and are still seeking answers. And I think that's what keeps our industry alive, is a lot of us still have questions.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're all searching for that next level. There, you know, a wise man, fool meet on a path. Who learns more? The wise man, because the fool never listens. There's always another question to be asked. I mean, I used to run a YouTube show called Disposable Trends, and through that YouTube show, I got hired to do news in Pasadena. And so I've learned that if you just get yourself out there, great things will happen. But if you sit in your room with a great idea and just keep thinking of the idea but not actually acting on it, not only will you not succeed with that idea, but once you've had it, that it's like, because of some sort of human energy between us all, somebody else had the same idea and now they're going to act on it. And do you want to be, you know, Edison, or do you want to be Tesla? You know, you got to figure out which side of that field you want to be playing on, because someone's going to succeed doing something very similar to what you want to do. And do you want to be on the sidelines watching them hoist the trophy while you realize the whole time you were just afraid to put on the cleats? Yeah.
Very good analogy there. Well, Jesse, I'm loving this. I mean, you got a lot of information. I want to make sure everybody who's listening gets some good advice from you. What, to those who may be struggling with alcoholism or struggling with trying to find that next thing in life, what advice would you give them if they're listening here right now, and maybe even going through COVID right now?
My very first principle in my book is titled "Develop a Growth Mindset," and I think that we can so often have a growth mindset. Perhaps you've always been very physically active, so going out and lifting weights and maintaining a physical regimen during COVID has been easy for you because it's second nature to figure out ways to be active and healthy and to eat right. So you have a growth mindset there, but perhaps you don't necessarily have one around what you're going to do when you're inside your house and what you're going to do with your family. So developing a growth mindset and being actively seeking it out in every aspect of your life is hands down going to be the most important thing that you ever create in your own mind. Because without a growth mindset, if you go into things with a fixed, closed mindset, you'll stop yourself before you even start. So if you're currently an addict and you think, well, I could never have 1,200 days like Jesse. Well, yeah, if you say that, then of course you'll never have that. But I'm not asking you to have 1,200 days like me right now. Can you have one day? Develop a growth mindset around having one day. If you were a college student who was really successful inside of a classroom and now you're being asked to do it online, and you think, well, I've never been good at learning things online. Develop a growth mindset and say, today I'm going to put maximum effort for 30 minutes into learning this one thing online. And when you sit there and you learn it, after 30 minutes and you're able to answer the questions at the end of the chapter, boom, you have just developed a growth mindset around an ability you didn't think that you had. Hands down, I sing to the rafters about developing a growth mindset.
Cool. Well, and what's one site or place that people can actually get a hold of you and find out more about you and what you do in your shows?
Yeah, absolutely. JesseMogle.com. It is the place to locate all information. Jesse, you can find links to both of my podcasts in the menu bar. You can find access to my coaching offers and just my whole coaching curriculum in general. It's called Life's Blueprint. It's up there as well. Also, if you want to bring me in to speak or come to your organization, I've got an event planners link there as well. So there's really nothing you can't find out about me via JesseMogle.com. And by all means, go on Instagram. I am very avidly on there, and it won't be too hard to find me there as well.
Okay, cool. Well, Jesse, I've appreciated you coming on the show today and sharing a little bit about yourself and what you do. And, it's been a blessing having you on the show. And I always like to close my show up with a little game. You've heard about my game, haven't you?
Oh, yes. Yes. It's... I'm gonna lean in.
Down. So Gary, I've been doing this game. I watched Sammy Hagar do it, and I'm like, hey, I think I could be cooler than Sammy Hagar. Let me try it. So I wrote 9 questions. They're this or that. I give you the 2 choices, and you decide which one's yours. And some of them I'm pretty sure we'll go in depth in, and some of them you're gonna be like, yeah, whatever. So let's start off with my favorite one to find out who my sci-fi people are, and that is Star Wars or Star Trek.
Star Wars.
Star Wars? Yeah.
Star Wars. I mean, I love me some Star Trek, but man, something about that Star Wars hero's journey has always resonated with me substantially more.
Yeah. Welcome to the dark side.
Yeah.
Let's take another sci-fi example and go, would you choose the red pill or the blue pill?
Red. Unplug me all day long. Now, when I first got sober, I remember crying in my car driving around the city of LA trying to find an addiction recovery meeting, and the traffic kept getting in my way. And I was just like, why didn't I take the blue pill? Why didn't I take the blue pill? Just plug me back into the matrix. I don't want to know the truth. I don't want to know any of this. Just let me think everything is fine. Yeah. Thank God, I made it through that. But yeah, I'm a red pill guy all the way, man. Show me how deep the rabbit hole goes.
It's funny that all of us, I think, in the beginning are like, crap. All right. But then eventually we realize, well, it wasn't that bad. And I'm sure after this is all over, we'll come out and say, well, this wasn't that bad. Right now, it's certain things are driving some of us crazy. But anyway.
Well, there's a glitch in the Matrix if everybody all of a sudden has corona. I don't understand why the Matrix did that.
My next one is your pets. Would you rather have a dog or a cat?
Oh boy, because as a child we were dog and cat people. At this stage in my life, a cat would be easier because I travel a lot and I need something in the house. As I get older and more stable, in addiction recovery, they say if you can keep a plant alive for a year, then we'll talk about you owning a pet. Down the line, I'm a dog person through and true. There's a love that a dog can show you when you walk through the door that a cat is just, they're ambivalent. They love you when it's convenient. A dog will love you all the time. So I sounds wishy-washy. I'm a dog person. But at this stage in my life, I would have to say neither because I can't really have an animal in this tiny little apartment. But man, I had a friend to bring a dog over today, and just seeing that dog, the tail and the big tongue, God, there's a love that a dog can give you that is unconditional.
Wow.
That was probably a longer answer than you needed.
How about taco or hamburger?
Oh, yeah, hamburger.
Hamburger?
Yeah, there's just so many variations of those that you can come up with that are just amazing.
They're both, 2 of them are very, 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 very interesting to figure out. And like every time I go around, somebody's got a new version of the burger or a new taco or even a vegan taco is pretty good actually.
Yeah. Vegan meat can be, especially with this whole Beyond Impossible thing that's been going on for sure.
Yeah. How about a cup of coffee or a glass of tea or a cup of tea?
Yeah, I'm a coffee guy. Yeah, I'm definitely. In fact, I've probably got 3 glasses of it sitting around this chair at some point.
It's like, you know what I mean? Are you like a Starbucks or a Dunkin' person or no?
I make it home person. I don't understand how the hell somebody's going to try to charge me $4 for a cup of Joe.
No, it's only $2.65 for my 2 shots of espresso.
See, you extrapolate that out over the entire day or entire month, and that's $60.
I was waiting for an addiction comment from Matt.
What's really funny is to see how many people in addiction recovery are sitting there slamming back coffee at 8 p.m. and chain smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, we'll worry about those down the road. For now, I'm just glad you're not doing heroin anymore. Coffee it's one of those things where sometimes I can just drink hot water and it can wake me up because it's a mental thing. Yeah. But there is something to be said about that 2 p.m. cup of coffee. Boy. Yeah.
For me, going to Starbucks, Jesse, like the afternoons, because I work from home, I live here. It was a break in my day. And that's just not necessarily because I needed another 2 shots of espresso, but it was like a break in my day to get out. And I found that while I'm just trying to sit there and relax, that I would meet people and start talking. Now I walk into Starbucks and everybody's like, "Hey, Tim, how you doing?" I mean, everybody's saying hi because I just go and I end up meeting people as a side benefit. Anyway.
Well, there's that social aspect that comes from sitting around a coffee shop, whether you're drinking coffee or tea, you're all there, and so there's a social aspect of it. Again, those are the things that this Corona quarantine took away from us that a lot of people are no doubt wishing could come back as soon as possible.
Yep. So my next one here can be a little bit of some people have opinions on this, but the pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No. And those people, no, I'm a very accepting person. Everybody is welcome to the Jesse party, but pineapple on pizza? I mean, we're going to have to sit you down at the door and ask you some questions about exactly how you came to the thought that was delicious. No.
Jesse. It's gonna suck because that's what I had for lunch.
There's always the chance that you answer that question and the person asking it's like, dude, I mainline pineapple. I don't understand what your problem is with it.
It is a controversial thing. There's people like you. I mean, they're like, no, that does not belong on a pizza. And then there's people like, dude, it's the greatest thing on pizza. It is such a great question.
And they call it the Hawaiian pizza. I don't know any Hawaiians to ask this question to, but do they actually eat that? It's sort of like Colin Foster's beer, Australian for beer. That stuff's made in Canada. So I remember bringing that getting brought up in an addiction meeting one time. I'm like, it's all marketing. So I don't know what. Maybe they had a too much pineapple in the 80s, and they were like, I have an idea: Canadian bacon and Hawaiian pineapple. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So let me ask this next one then. Would you rather listen to a podcast or read a book?
Yeah, right now I'm favoring the podcasts. Yeah, now whenever I hear that, I also think Audible.
Yeah,
I do a lot of Audibles, and I'm currently reading this one book that's absolutely fantastic. It's actually in my hands. It's one of those books I knew what I would need to be able to dissect with the written word over the audio. But yeah, I mean, get in the car in Los Angeles, and it takes you an hour and a half to drive 11 miles. In that hour and a half, you can get through 3 podcasts or a third of an Audible book. So Yep. Yeah, I'm audio right now.
Cool. My next one here is another war question, and that is the toilet paper. Does it go over or under on the roll?
Over.
Over?
Always. Over. I don't understand under at all. Again.
Jesse, that is the one question, like I'll ask it, and like the calmest person during the whole interview will get really emotional about it.
Well, I just burned through so much emotion with the pineapple. I'm just like, no. Everything I said about the pineapple times it by 10 if you put the toilet paper roll under. Like, what is the rationale there? Yeah. It doesn't, I mean, why would you want it further away? And then whenever it breaks, it's hidden behind the roll.
And no matter who answers that question, no matter what way, they all have a different reason as to why it goes that way.
What is the rationale behind the underway? I need to know that. Somebody, please hit me up on social media. Let me know.
Yeah. And my last one is boxers or briefs.
Oh yeah, this is definitely easier. They're like boxer briefs.
Yeah.
So they're the ones that like they're tight, but they go down to like halfway over the thigh. Yeah. Hands down. And boxers, too loose. Briefs, too constrictive. Got to have that middle ground.
Yeah. So it wasn't that bad of a quiz. So I got you through it.
That was super fun. I mean, I'm thinking that could be a way for me to end my podcast. I mean, there's some times we got laughing. You got me super fired up about pineapple. I may have lost some followers because of
No, I did. I watched like Sammy Hagar's Rock and Roll Road Trip, and he does that with the people he interviews. And I'm like, I can do that. So then I looked up a bunch of this or that questions, and then like I gotta have 2 controversial questions in there. And the toilet paper was always the controversial one. And then I always put the boxers or briefs at the end, but the controversial ones is toilet paper and the pineapple on pizza. Those 2 will evoke the emotions in you people every time.
Yeah, way more than like Coke or Pepsi or Netflix or Blockbuster ever would. You start getting into toilet paper and pizza toppings. Wars have been started for less.
Yeah. So, well, Jesse, one more time, tell everybody your website so they can get a hold of you.
Yes, jessemogle.com. Go check me out there. You guys don't ever forget. Don't ruin a good today thinking about a bad yesterday. jessemogle.com. I will give you the power of positive energy, and you can then release it and flow with life.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jesse, for being on the show today. And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in, finding out about Jesse. Go check him out, jessemogle.com. All right. And see what he's got over there. Check out his podcasts and listen in. I'm Tim Gillette with the Tim Gillette Show, and we will have another podcast coming up real soon, but go subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Anchor FM, and YouTube. I'm Tim Gillette. I'll see you next time. Bye now.